March 28, 2019. Getting the truck ready to go to Good Guys on Saturday in Pleasanton. So I got the wheels off. Had a knocking in the front end when we came back from New Mexico in February. Just started doing it. Got underneath it, and the rack, steering rack bushings were loose, and it was like the rack was probably hitting the cross member when you hit a bump. So replaced them today, and I just thought, while I had it up, cleaned the back of the wheels, cleaned the tires, thought I'd just shoot a little bit what went into building this truck. Right now it's sitting on probably about 34,000 miles. Here, I'll turn the ignition on and get an exact figure on how many miles it's got on it since we put it together. $34,830 miles since it's been built, and during that time it's made 2 trips to Denver, Colorado. 1 trip we hauled back a Ford farm tractor on a tandem axle car trailer. Been to Southern California twice. We live in Sacramento area, so it's been down to the LA area. We went to picked up the Diamond T that's kind of sitting over here, the project that kind of like got buried with a house project. So that's house paint and stuff for painting the house and everything piled around it. So it's not getting, nothing's been done to it, and probably for about 2 years now. Just things like, it seems like everything takes precedence over it. So we went down and we picked that truck up. That was a 1.5 ton farm truck, and we brought it back on trailer. I've got some pictures of that. And then we went down last fall and brought this Astro mill back from Irwindale. Came back on the trailer with no problem. So I'm going to slide underneath here. Truck's get the light here. Picture underneath the hood. It's a 5.4 Triton out of a 98 F-150. I bought the truck totaled off a government auction site. It had 28,000 miles when I put the engine in this truck, and now the truck's got almost 35,000 on it. So it's got, what, 63,000 miles on the engine and transmission. Just got done this last fall. Hooked up the air conditioning on it, built the fan shroud, mounted the AC condenser. The AC condenser, and then below it is a tandem oil cooler. The bottom part of the oil cooler, just a 2-pass, is engine oil cooler. And the top part of the cooler, which is behind the grill, kind of hidden, is a transmission auxiliary oil cooler. And then in front of it, we have a power steering cooler. So it's just kind of like when it came out of the original truck. It had every one of them coolers was on the original F-150. The F-150 engine oil cooler, though, was a oil to water heat exchanger, and it ran off the lower radiator hose, but there was no way to hook it up on this one, so we had to go to the air to oil cooler. So I'm going to slide underneath here. I'll give you little pictures of what's in the truck. Truck's got a Mustang II front suspension, and these are what I just replaced today. The rack mount bushings, they were loose and allowing the rack to actually touch the cross member when you hit a bump. So it's got a like a Thunderbird style rack on it. The suspension came out from underneath like a 78 Mercury Bobcat station wagon. It's got some old school brackets from TCI that actually hold, these are Ford Fairmont calipers that are, caliper brackets and calipers with the Granada rotors. So everything on this truck is all, try to keep it all Ford. So it's, as you look underneath here, it's got catalytic converters, dual exhaust, it's mandrel bent, 409 stainless, it's got fore and aft O2 sensors on it. Up underneath, I actually used the original lines for the transmission cooler and just cut them up here to where I could hook it into the bottom of the radiator, and then the one goes out and goes over to the auxiliary cooler in front of the radiator, and then the return back here. And then these two lines coming down here actually go to the oil filter adapter. So you got engine oil cooler in there, and then I used actually the stock Ford motor mounts, and then I made a bracket that kind of mimicked what was on the original Ford, that the mount just sits down in and it locates itself, and you just drop the bolt in. Works really good. It's running 3 universal joints on it. The bottom one is a shock absorbing joint. It's got a rubber joint in it. Then it goes up, and it's using the stock steering shaft off the 98 F-150 that we shortened down, so it's still got a telescopic shaft on it. And then right in here you can see the bell crank in there. I made the bell crank, and then it's operating the transmission digital range selector, which should have been right here on the transmission, but it would not work. As you see, the proximity of the catalytic converter was right in the way. So we moved it, and it got it to operate up there off the bell crank. Like I said, the truck's got almost 35,000 miles on it with no problem. Transmission's E4OD out of the 98 Ford. Used the stock lines that came off the back of come down the center of the transmission, the fuel lines, pressure and return, and then just cut them and flared them, or I could put a flare fitting in them to make steel lines to go to the back of the truck. The half-inch line there is for the evaporative emissions. Since it's so tight up here in the front where the catalytic converter is, I took the lines and ran them outside the frame through frame bushing, so you can see the brake line to the rear brakes and the evaporative emissions line. They come through over on this side of the frame, then go up the side here and up by the digital transmission range selector. The brake line goes up, and there's a little bracket. I used the top 2 bolts where the original steering box mounted to build a bracket. I put just a standard generic 4-wheel disc brake proportioning valve. The brakes work real good. That's probably 55-45 or maybe 60-40 on the brakes. You stand on the brakes and lock them up. The fronts will lock up before the backs, but it'll lock all 4 of them up. So, like I said, the exhaust is 2.5 inch. It's 409 stainless, and then I made the brackets, the hangers for them using some insulators I got from McMaster Car to dampen it. Like I said, the truck's got quite a few miles on it now, and it still works. And so there's the back mount here, the way I set it up. As we follow it back, you can see got the charcoal canisters there, the fuel filter, all the evaporative emissions and everything on the truck are still in place and functioning. I'm running the factory tune for the 5.4, which I wanted to keep it like that because of I use the truck, we pull the trailer with it, and it's self-learning right now, using a fuel tank, a poly tank from Tanks, that's for like a 49 to 51 Ford passenger car. out of the top of the tank. We made an adapter for the center where the electric fuel pump for this tank went. So it's running the stock Ford fuel pump with the stock Ford sending unit, which is controlling the feeding the feed to the ECM, and then in the other fuel sending unit hole is a fuel sending unit for the gauge itself. I'm running 2 sending units on it, and then in the back here in the corner is a pressure transducer for the emissions. All right, so thought I'd just give you a little what I used to make the truck. It's running Posey's rear springs on it. Made the brackets for the shocks, welded them on the axle. The rear brakes are 87 Lincoln Continental, which is the last rear wheel drive Lincoln Continental. They went to front wheel drive the next year, but they had 4-wheel disc brakes, but they wouldn't fit on the 9-inch axle, so I ended up cutting the bracket and then welding it onto the Ford 9-inch housing, and then using the original emergency brake cables, and then I just had a custom cable made for the front. So that's it for now. Yes, dear.